Oh yeah, for sure. I want to be famous, so it's okay.
All right. So that is ready. Oh, it's ready. Ready. All right, and then with that, I will begin. The next one is agriculture. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, is there a roadmap?
On case.
Okay, I'm sorry. You can restart the time, obviously. Usually we
Yeah.
stay that, but it's fine.
Sure. So it's 2 advantages and then solvency.
Beautiful. Cool.
Great. All right, I will begin. Better towards agriculture. Ag concentration kills food sustainability and causes food collapse. Also, food insecurity, depressed innovation, and hidden costs. NSAC in 21. Food and agriculture industry has become highly and increasingly concentrated. 4 corporations responsible for 65% of sales. Agriculture plus 50% of the seed market. 4 companies represent 75% of beef processing. Concentration does not even account for rising consolidations. All are competitive. So all the concentration leads to an exclusion of competitors, reduced workers, pricing secures the decline in product quality, depressed innovation, and research. Influence heavily Robert Brock. New guy is part of food merchant acquisitions, giving consolidated agribusiness corporations the ability to buy out, expand their services markets, and challenge industrial meat industry, food processors, excess profit to consolidate further. Now, this is what the evolution of farming to diversify to look less industry. Bifurcated food system is sustainable and resilient as COVID-19 revealed last year. Food manufacturing industry could not easily pivot, and farmers were forced to utilize their livestock, high risk consumers. Food is being destroyed. Tens of millions of Americans struggle to feed their families. They still are. Structural position, our food system, our food disconnected parallel system, the risk of loss face and a disruption. Food system, food insecurity, malnutrition, diet-related health issues, and to maximize efficiency, profits, the active system, middle and accrue more than 80 cents of every food dollar is the status quo with defending it is for the corporations so mass power from excessive subsidized commodity production, consolidate operations and concentrate by no responsibility for hidden costs. Link. Shifting away from CWS is key. It solves big at concentrations. AELP in 21. Just the consumer welfare standard. Consumer welfare standard is ideological interpretation entered championed by conservative Supreme Court. Based purely on whether an action increases economic efficiency, not based on broader concern, the concentration of power. The consumer welfare standard is hard to deliver for consumers who has higher prices charged by monopolistic firms. Consumer welfare standard has systematically allowed merchants to decrease consumer prices, led to high concentration across the category. Most of farmers consumer welfare ideologues ignore. The American supply is controlled by monopolists. Farmers are being squeezed on both ends. Giant agribusiness monopolies keep charging high prices for seeds, fertilizer, and other input. Food service giants put pricing pressure on the entire production system, breaking out agribusiness monopolies. Congress imposed an immediate moratorium for consolidation among big agribusinesses. Open investigations that reasonable acquisitions use all their authorities into unwind the consolidated agricultural supply chain, break corporations like Tyson, Smithfield, ban price discrimination, prohibit packers from using short-term contracts, outlaw retaliation against growers. Congress's agriculture policy, members of long since used the bill to help big agribusiness, should reverse this trend. Only prevented the most harmful mergers and acquisitions in agriculture, shift the market away from consolidation and establish a sustainable farming model. That's Mooney et al. In 17. Agriculture is sparking consolidation. Migration takes us to a new scale. Significant restructuring is underway. Agricultural companies, seed companies, fertilizer breeders, pharmaceutical firms, farm machinery companies are looking to consolidate. Independent traders finding it difficult to compete, leading processes and moving upstream to overseas supply chains, increasing levels of concentration, reinforce the industrial farming model, exacerbating social and environmental fallout. Consolidation allows firms to pool political capital to influence decision making. Upstream consolidation left farmers hostage to the extent of exacerbating system power imbalances. Discover innovation is narrow. Dominant firms brought up the innovators to shift research and defensive mode and investment. Companies shifted R&D resources, entered new product lines. Are an illusion of innovation, but amounts of repackaging existing products. Innovation from startups tend to be diluted as smaller brands are brought up at mega firms. Integration is driving a reduction in seed and livestock genetic diversity while increasing the risk of disease proliferation. Industrial agriculture, driven by mega mergers, create a system that relies on massive monocultural farms and an increasingly limited number of genetically modified seeds. That's NSAC in 21. The farm industry has become too concentrated. Genetically engineered cities taken over. Multinational corporations remove non-GE varieties, resulting in a reduction in farmer choice, as well as the decimation of crop biodiversity. The U.S. lost 93% of its agricultural genetic diversity. Genetic uniformity poses a significant threat to food supply. The more susceptible farmers go to pathogens or climate events, the tendency for farmers to specialize in risks, extreme weather, pest, disease, pest, price cycles, micro fluctuations. The U.S. agriculture has become dependent on corn and soybeans. Corn is resource intensive, demands copious water and nitrogen. Industrial farmers begin to erode coverage of soil. Massive monocultures fail. A single disaster, disease, pest, or economic downturn has major disarray. So much corn is not necessary. Agribusiness might see an overproduction, depressed prices. Industrial practices erode soil if non-GE strains may no longer be able to maintain yields. So as farmers without sustainable farming, they will rely on patented products. Problem consolidation traps farmers and limiting them to unsustainable practices. Loss of PG leads to species expansion. Empirics prove. Let's go into Roger all in 15. The importance of plant genetic diversity, PGD, is not being recognized. Genetic diversity, the key pillar of biodiversity and diversity within species, between species, and of ecosystems. Modern crop varieties have been developed for high yield, low net production conditions, low income farmers facing highly variable stress conditions. Food production systems rely on highly selective cultivars. Food production levels decrease. There will be huge pressure to cultivate unsustainable practices. The diversity and biodiversity, genetic composition of a crop influences how its members adapt. Populations that have narrow gene types may fail to survive. In this case, the entire plant species may end up at risk of extinction. As the gene takes the full solar area, so one plant species are pushed to marginal habitat limitations. The physiological tolerance may enter an extinction vortex. This genetic variability is a key step in the extinction vortex. Loss of PGD leads to food scarcity and payments. Let's go into Roger all in 15. System problems such as the Irish potato famine or instances of food crises caused by large-scale cultivation of genetically homogeneous varieties of potato. Modern crop varieties have been developed for high-yield weather protection uses low compartments have facing highly variable stress conditions. Genetic variety composition of a crop influences how its members adapt. Populations of narrow G types may fail to survive. Reach genetic variability is a key step in the extinction vortex. Diverse plant genetic research to place stats of food which cannot be lost. Such materials required for feeding a burgeoning population. Impact. Multiple new studies conclude food insecurity is a principal cause of war. That's according to Magazine 16. Areas with more access to food but less food availability experience more conflict. Underscore the independent effect of food insecurity and conflict in highlighting the high premium armed actors placed on securing food. If current food security trends are correct, we will see an increase in armed conflict. All models show a statistically significant change of positive 92% in probability of conflict. Demand side food insecurity will directly compel the groups to seek out and fight over food. Conflict of resources with low availability might arise as a principal outcome for insecurity. The relation between food security and conflict are robust across numerous alternative specs and apply an independent effect of food insecurity and shaping conflict dynamics and conflict risk is certainly considered alongside current climatic conditions. Countries will see an increase in worldwide in the coming years. Moving on to the second advantage. Antitrust law is failing now. Corporate market consolidation undermines innovation, slows growth, and suppresses productivity. Foreign competition solved to more than 20. Antitrust law is falling short. Cartels go undiscovered. Collusion is prevalent. Anti-competitive mergers are undeterred. Firms with market power need not compete aggressively. They tend to raise prices, reduce quality, and innovate less. Market power slow economic growth. By suppressing productivity increases, economic studies show innovation is harmed by anti-competitive conduct. Antitrust is a terrific policy tool to strengthen competition. Does not come with efficiency downside. Policies enhance competition, beneficial for efficiency as well as inclusive prosperity. Other policies such as labor market and tax policies create disincentive for their efficiency. Loss of sustained anti-competitive behavior is regressive and makes economic collapse inevitable. It's Aggie and Schaefer and Hasselhoff 21. Direct cost of anti-competitive behavior is high. Price of returns in advanced economies found to be ranging 15 to 50%. Harm to economy can reach 4% of GDP. Lack of competition hurts the poor more in each country. Market power should be regressive. Extra cost of living negatively correlated with agricultural competition. Market power is decisively increasing the wealth of the rich 10%, or large income of poorest 20%. Long-term effect of increasing hegemony have been to discourage innovation and to bring non-superstar firms leading to a decrease in productivity growth, by business dynamism, facilitate insufficient competition policy. Like state-based market intervention is the key to sustainable growth. In alternative to well-measured connections and unfettered and aggressive free market. Again, that's Aggie and Sheriff and Hasselhoff 21. Broad-based growth is far and away the most important source of poverty reduction. Innovation-based growth based on some and creative destruction is key to productivity grants and sustained growth. State intervention should limit itself to an adequate level of competition. Firms have the incentive to invest efforts to be competitive through innovation. Growth harmed by anti-competitive behaviors or distortive policies. Tackling these externalities necessitate state intervention. TFP growth and product innovation are all positively correlated with market competition. The way state intervenes in the economy is crucial. Impact. Eroding financial resilience causes war that overcomes traditional barriers to conflict. So Dardam and Pop-Up in 19. Financial crisis, growing concerns with the increased possibility of large-scale military conflict, current political landscape, prolonged economic crisis could easily spin out of control and morph into military conflict and world war. 2008 almost bankrupted the government. Managed to pull the world economy from the brink. Primarily quantitative easing and low interest rates. Another crisis more severe than last is likely. Another round of economic stress, forward unrest, conflict, even war. Increased social tensions, turmoil, especially on growing precariat and other people vulnerable or threatened. Ethnic populist nationalism exacerbates tensions, leading to conflicts. Economic conflicts or financial crisis lead to military confrontation, even if unintended. Those wars during great powers, that outweighs, that's Somerset 17. Risk is that traditional strategy for battling recession is unavailable, given zero lower bound. Next recession may well be protracted and deep, with severe global consequences. A resurgence in protectionism, populism, and scapegoating is the greatest risk. It is political doom loop. Lose confidence in government's ability to improve lives. Government has an incentive to rally popular support by focusing attention on threats. Temptation to stigmatize minority groups increases. Tendency to magnify foreign threats. Putin, Erdogan, and Xi all made nationalism a central part of governing strategy. Countries can no longer rely on U.S. to feel pressure to provide for our own security. Adversaries inevitably seek to fill the voids left behind into the U.S. retrenches, and thus the plan. The United States federal government should substantially increase prohibitions on anti-competitive business practices by the private sector by at least expanding the scope of its core antitrust laws to include an effective competition standard. Moving on to solvency. The plan solves an effective competition standard reinvigorates antitrust. That's Simon and Stuck in 19. The emerging evidence points to less competition, higher markups, greater concentration, and widening wealth and income inequality. Antitrust laws are supposed to deal with concentrated economic power. The laws have been hijacked and ideologized narrowed by substantive antitrust. Courts elevated the burden of proof. Plaintiffs to such an extent that the Sherman and Clayton antitrust acts have become unenforceable. If U.S. continues and turns a blind eye to abuses by dominant firms, concentration, quota capitalism increase, competition will decrease, profits will continue to fall into fewer hands. Trend is reversible if we restore antitrust as guarantor of effective competition, offer an effective competition antitrust standard to replace prevailing consumer welfare standard, restores the primary aim of antitrust laws, and it's enforceable and sufficient. That's Steinman and Stuck 19 again. Effective competition standard further differs from a consumer welfare standard in 4 important ways. A substantial lesson in competition suffices for liability. The effective competition standard makes antitrust more enforceable, takes a tougher stance of monopolistic exclusionary practices, reduces competitive opportunities for entrants and rivals, protects market participants, restores the purpose of Clayton to arrest restraints of trade, violative of Sherman, to promote competition and innovation. Effective competition standard would depart from today's light touch antitrust policies in following areas. I yield the rest of my time, which is 10 seconds. I'm open for cross.
All right, setting up my timer right now. I'll be asking questions in 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you stated, well, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm just asking, so you're stating that the fact that there's big companies, those big companies therefore equal less food. So the big company that there is now doesn't allow for, to produce an amount of food that'll be able to feed the US population.
Sure. So our agriculture advantage is basically stating that big agriculture companies are actually producing genetically modified seeds and are actually decreasing innovation in that sector. So they're forcing small farmers to buy those genetically modified seeds, which is further, eroding the soil and forcing small farmers to buy those genetically modified seeds, once again, reaffirming that cycle. So those genetically modified seeds are reducing genetic biodiversity because those genetically modified seeds are all genetically identical. This causes other genetically diverse species to die out, which leads to species extinction, which is our link card and our impact card. And as species extinction will lead to famine. We saw that with empirics to the Irish potato famine, because they were only developing one variety of potato that caused,
So
famine.
again, that you're saying all these things, but you're also saying that it will lead to less food.
That's what a famine is. Yes, people don't have food.
Okay, gotcha. Now another question is, you mentioned that economic decline would lead to war. Is that correct?
That is our impact, yes.
Yes. Now, how would that lead to war?
Are you asking me to re-explain my econ advantage? So
if-
first,
if-
antitrust law is currently failing now. That's our Morton 20 evidence. Our Allianz Sheriff and Hasselhoff says that anti-competitive behavior is regressive, makes econ collapse inevitable.
But how does that lead
That's
to
just
war?
what that is. I'm getting to that. So our impact card, first of all, specifically Sedano and Pop-Up 19, says that, the financial crisis is that the more we lose our economy, the further we lose hegemony in the world. So we lose our sphere of influence, we lose how much influence we have throughout the world. And as we lose that influence, we lose the ability to protect other countries. Countries feel threatened. And furthermore, as we lose our ability to protect other countries such as Russia,
those
China,
countries not
so on and
protect
so
themselves?
forth.
Or can they not team up together to be able to protect each other? Does the US 100% supply each of those countries?
It doesn't
Therefore,
matter
if
whether or not they can protect themselves. It's the fact that they feel threatened. And the fact that they feel threatened is what's going to cause war.
Okay, gotcha. But the US itself won't go to war. You're saying other countries will, not the US.
Well, when nukes start flying, nuclear winter happens, and then
So it's
everybody
nuclear war,
dies.
not regular war.
People have nukes.
Can you real quick define
That's-
regular war?
Well, that's the end of time. All right, so he'll be sending over the documents soon.
One second. Okay, I just sent it over. Did everyone else get it?
I do have your document.
Okay. Okay. The opponents have the document. Let me see. It is reply all. Yeah, they said they don't, but yeah. I'll send it one more time just to see. Oh, 1 second. I'll add it in a second. What was the name? Okay. Okay, now I sent it. I added the other email. No, it's fine. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your email too.
Sorry.
Hmm?
School's been doing some
Oh, yeah, it's
restructuring
good.
with the stuff. I'm sorry.
The Gmail one doesn't have any attachments. When you go to reply all on Gmail, you need to hit.
Yeah, I did. Wait, can you mute? Yeah,
the-
I just
let me double
added
check
it.
then.
I sent like another one. Yeah, and then I had to send another one because I had to add the second email. So there's a lot, but the last one should have everyone on it.
Thank you. Sorry for the trouble.
Okay, everyone has it open then? Cool. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna do 3 off case, and then I'm gonna move on to the 2 advantages. So if everyone's ready, I'm gonna start in 3, 2, 1. Counterplan, the FTC should use its rulemaking authority under Section 5 of the FTC Act to substantially increase prohibitions on anti-competitive business practices by the private sector and include an effective competition standard. First, the Act's own solvency evidence states the plan can be adjudicated through the FTC's rulemaking authority, Steinbaum and Stuck at 2019. The FTC can use its authority under the FTC Act to reach these anti-competitive practices on mergers through rulemaking. Next, the 30% increase in FTC funding for a big tech-focused division ensures increased scrutiny over Silicon Valley. Raman Zakarzewski 21. Policy proposal by Democrats would set aside $1 billion for the FTC to create a new digital-focused division that would police online abuse, represent 30% increase, add more firepower to an agency whose resources are outmatched. The FTC ill-equipped for the digital age, its $351 million appropriation amounts to a fraction of the $1 billion earned. Next, for the first DA, FTC's increasing enforcement in privacy now. It's focused on an algorithmic bias. Fazio 21. New FTC chair signaled FTC may increase enforcement in private and data security. Slaughter pointed to areas of focus for FTC. FTC intends to focus on algorithmic discrimination. Companies will keep in mind focus FTC. FTC has indicated it will beef up privacy law penalties. Next, antitrust enforcement saps up FTC resources with personnel which are finite. Reinhardt et al. 21. FTC will face resource constraints. Antitrust litigation is expensive and laborious process requiring millions and large army of staff attorneys taking years to accomplish. FTC can only litigate a handful of matters at a time. And even with extra resources, FTC will still have to pick cases carefully. Next, that trades off with the necessary resources for privacy enforcement. McGinnis and Sun 20. FTC needs resources to address privacy concerns. FTC oversees privacy and antitrust. FTC needs to police tech companies requesting increased funding. Without FTC will be enforced to conduct privacy investigations less thoroughly and forgo them altogether. FTC's resources spread too thin across multiple missions to the detriment of privacy efforts. Removing antitrust to reallocate resources to privacy would free up the scarce time. Next, unchecked algorithmic bias risks massive inequality and extinction. Thomas 20. Clybion, concerned with machines being fed faulty incentives by humans, and as MIT physics professors and leading AI researchers put it, real threat from AI is competence. Emphasized importance of preparation means working to eliminate data bias, which has a corrupting effect on algorithms and fat fly on the AI ointment. Expect AGI, and if we bumble unprepared, it will be the biggest mistake in human history. Enable brutal dictatorship with unprecedented inequality, suffering, and extinction. If we steer carefully, we'll end up in a fantastic future. Next, for the politics DA, vote to raise the debt limit would pass now, but it won't be easy. Emma and Schultz 8-4. The next action is a continuing resolution to keep the government open. Support from at least 10 Senate Republicans will be needed. The GOP is promising a painful fight despite high hurdles. The timing might work out on the debt limit. Next, Pushing antitrust legislation trade-off with other legislative priorities and cost Biden political capital costs in 2021. Despite bipartisan murmurs about competitive issues, the potential in divided Congress that any major initiatives will survive is limited. The Biden administration were to make a reform of competition law a major commitment trade-off with other goals, including healthcare reform or increase in the minimum wage. In this circumstance, the new administration would elect to give up stricter competition rules in order to achieve other legislative priorities. This is a pessimistic prognostication for the likely Biden antitrust enforcement agenda. This requires a willingness to take major enforcement risks, to invest significant political capital in these legislative processes, and to select leaders who are committed to advancing the public interest in fair, efficient, and dynamically competitive markets. Next, Biden needs political capital to ensure the debt ceiling is raised. Garvey 8-4. Both sides have tended to use government shutdown as threats of frustrating the other. There are ways to expedite this process, but considerable arm twisting always tends to be the dominant strategy. The Democrats provide such as fiscal reform requirements, adding the debt ceiling solution to wider democratic fiscal objectives, and pushing the whole lot through the risk. Some Democrats could disagree with this approach. Next, failure to raise the debt ceiling sparks an immediate worldwide economic crash. Egan 722. If Congress doesn't raise the debt ceiling, the federal government will run out of cash by October or November. McConnell is already vowing that Republicans will not vote to raise the federal borrowing limit. Failing to do so risks a tank to the economy. A default would be disastrous. U.S. debt is considered among the safest securities on the planet, the benchmark for measuring all other risk. Markets would tumble. Few policy matters in Washington would have such destructive economic capability. A default could cause an immediate cascading catastrophe of unbelievable proportions and damage America for 100 years. Next, prolonged downturn and risk global war. Thunder of 19. As fears rise of yet another international financial crisis, there are growing concerns about the increased possibility of large-scale military conflict. Worryingly, in the current political landscape, prolonged economic crisis threats could easily spin out of control and morph into military conflict and world war. Prolonged economic distress has worsened public antipathy towards the culturally alien, not only abroad but also within. Another round of economic stress likely to foment unrest and conflict. For the first advantage, antitrust fails, lobbyists block and water down enforcement. Jones and Kovacic 20. The AAG of antitrust serves the president, making DOJ policy dependent on support. FTC is dependent on a good relationship with Congress, which controls its budget, can react forcefully when it disapproves of FTC litigation. Cases may be derailed if political support wins. Litigation may mobilize the legislative intervention that causes enforcement to founder. It will be hazardous to assume a sustained, well-financed lobbying campaign will be ineffective. Next, monoculture is declining now. Hansen 12. No-till systems are being adopted with more intensive crop rotation. 25% of cultivated land is managed with no-till, and adoption continues to increase. Increased precipitation efficiency, improve soil, reduce dependence on fertilizer, adapt to climate change, help meet markets for biomass energy. Next, advances in genomic analysis and editing allow plants to adapt to changing climates. Henry 20. Plant genetic improvement has been supported by new tech have arisen at an ever-increasing rate, has progressed through major developments such as molecular markers and selection, genetic transformation, genomic to gene editing. Gene editing is currently being widely applied and can be used to directly generate new crop varieties. Combination of advances in genomic analysis and gene editing would allow for a new phase of plant improvement to target adaptation of crops to new field or protected environments. Next, ag kills the environment. Big ag is better for it. Nordhaus and Blaustein-Rado 21. Sustainable ag vastly overstates how much food is produced. Organic don't outperform large farms by environmental measures. Scale, tech, and productivity make good environmental and economic sense. Shift and tail more forests, greater habitat loss, and more emissions. Organic farming often results in greater nitrogen pollution because manure is highly inefficient. Large scale are so efficient, able to produce vastly more food, making the largest ag exporter. Next, small and organic farms are worse for the environment, habitat loss, and nitrogen pollution. Nordhaus 21. Organic farms don't outperform large conventional farms by important environmental measures. Requires more land until converting more forests, greater habitat loss, more emissions, greater nitrogen pollution. Manure is inefficient. Large-scale U.S. farms are so efficient, economically, environmentally produce more food than humans consume. In environmental imagination, highly productive, globally traded ag is bad. A pound of grain or beef from the U.S. always displaces a pound produced with more land and emissions somewhere else. Next, for the second advantage, the plan completely debases the consumer welfare standard. The consumer welfare standard, Clayton and Sherman, drives financial markets into uncertainty. Turns case right 10. Encouraging antitrust investigations justify the priori policy conclusion that banks are violating the antitrust laws is not sound policy advice. What are the gains from antitrust enforcers? Prosecution of conduct, and they know how they know falls outside the scope of prohibited by the Sherman Act. Injecting too big to fail as an antitrust concept is not a minor tweak to the system. Attempts to operationalize it within the antitrust framework is cause more harm than good by undermining a disciplined and economic approach. Consumer welfare is complicated enough. The threat to subsume the economic approach. Antitrust is an inappropriate vehicle for addressing those problems, and its use here would introduce problems of its own. Next, econ decline doesn't cause war. Walt 20. Hardly time for Russia to grab Ukraine or China to make a play for Taiwan. Costs clearly outweigh benefits. if the presidents were cause of war would be a lot more. U.S. has suffered 40 or more recessions, has fought 20 interstate wars, most unrelated to the economy. No matter what a country's economic conditions, leaders will not go to war unless they can do so quickly, cheaply, and with the probability of success. Next, econ is resilient. Dresden 12. In a G0 world, the global response to the financial crisis reveals a more optimistic picture. Despite initial shocks more severe than 1929, global governance responded quickly and robustly, displayed surprising resiliency. Institutions performed well to reinforce open economic policies. Next, antitrust against big ag undoubtedly skyrockets price and lowers sustainability. Watson and Winfrey 21. Any antitrust will affect prices and availability. Cheaper food helps all and alleviates food security. Antitrust in larger ag firms would result in protectionism. Consolidation is due to changes in the cost structure and does not create higher prices. This is an empirical question. Antitrust arguing for higher food prices. It has been shown that monopolies pollute less than firms and more competitive markets. Williamson pointed out a more concentrated market led to increase in social welfare. Breaking up big ag would limit competition. New regulation undoubtedly increases food costs. Spike in food prices had a harsh effect. Policymakers should proceed with caution in using antitrust in ag. I'm going to concede the rest of the 20 seconds. That was way faster than
Are you ready for cross?
Okay, sorry, I'm ready.
So starting cross now. All right, so first in your counter plan, is your counter plan just to do the plan through the FDC?
Mhm.
All right, so first of all, how does that not link to your FTC DSAD?
It doesn't link to the FTC DSAD because the DSAD is saying that currently the FTC, if we were to pass your plan, they wouldn't have enough funding or staff to be able to handle both what you're saying in regards to big ag and the current
Right, but
like
the
the
FTC
argument
would
that we're
still
making
be
in the DSAD.
enforcing the plan, right? Because you're passing it through the FTC.
No, we would be passing a plan through the FTC that's focusing on something that isn't what you're arguing.
You just said you're passing our plan, but the actor is the FTC, yes?
Yeah, but we're not solving your advantages.
So then what advantages are you solving?
What we're talking about with in the privacy loss and bad actors getting control of advancing in artificial intelligence.
What is the definition of a counterplan?
A plan that isn't solving the AF.
Okay, all right, moving on. Does your anyway, the FTC in your document, the FTC still says that Congress should pass Democrats' $1 billion proposal to create a new digital focused division, right? So that still necessitates passing something through Congress, right?
Yeah, but you are not addressing
it was a yes or no question.
Sure,
so
whatever.
You do pass something through Congress as part of your counterplan?
Can you repeat the last part of the question?
Do you pass something through Congress as part of your counterplan? Yes?
Yes.
So how do you not trigger your politics DSAD?
I mean, we can pick whichever one we want. We can make multiple arguments and then choose later which ones we want to go for.
So your counterplan is conditional?
Can you explain further with that? What do you mean by that?
So you're arguing for a counterplan that you can kick out of any time, while we as the affirmative cannot kick out of our plan? Can I take your silence as a yes?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
No.
Moving on. So you read that you literally read our economy impact card, yet you also said that economy decline does not lead to war. Which should we prefer?
Which would I prefer?
No, which one should we prefer? The affirmative?
I don't know, you pick. Like,
we should pick? Thank you. Moving on. You read that antitrust reform fails now, but you're also reading a counterplan saying that you're passing antitrust reform. Which do we prefer? That's time. 10 minutes of running prep, starting now. Step rep 359.
I just sent it out. Let me know when you guys all get it. You guys got it yet? Vincent's got it. Joseph's got
Yes.
it. Awesome. They just got it too. Okay.
Yep, we got it. We're good.
Okay. Timer starting. Second. Let's get that set up. It's been a long weekend. All right. Muted. Everybody can hear me okay? Good. Everybody's ready. You're ready. This is mine. Okay. I'm going to go on case, solvency, ag, econ. Then I'm going to go off case. All right. Timer starts. No. A2, pay the fine, solvency. This assumes antitrust ex post remedies are fine, not true. Expanding to the effective competition standard increases extent of remedies to include corporation breakups. Companies don't want to risk getting structurally separated, so they will change their behaviors. That's our Steinman and Stuck's EV from 1AC. Courts fail in the status quo because they interpret how to evaluate cases now, erring to consumers. Shifting to a mandating evaluation of cases on effects on market competition overall solves. That's Steinman and Stuck. Next, congressional direction is key. Clarity solves. Overcoming even stringent criticisms of judicial antitrust. That's Morton 20. Judicial decisions interpreting the antitrust law have limited enforcement. Fortunately, Congress is the final arbitrator and can change it. Congress has not amended these laws in the past 60 years. Legislation should overturn Supreme Court precedent that has inoculated exclusionary conduct and clarify antitrust laws to protect competition. Next, AG. Plan solves AG. Lack of competition means monopolies have no incentives to create new technology to solve food insecurity. This causes extinction through food wars, which escalate and go nuclear. They did not respond to our food wars. Next, R1AC evidence cites aggregated studies on food scarcity and conflict likelihood, analyzing the cause of every historical conflict and how lack of resources contributed to escalation and tensions. And food demand is an inelastic need. Their EV doesn't take into account a world where there are shocks to the entire food system caused by contamination of the overall food supply, much more likely in concentrated markets. That's 1AC internal link EV. Next, 4 corporations are being responsible for 65% of sales is not good for competition or innovation within agriculture. It increases prices, excludes new competitors from the market, and create a bifurcated food system, meaning AG Tech declines and monocultures within what is produced are inevitable. That's our 1C and SAC and EVs. Ag mergers hurt innovation. Even if R&D spending is unchanged, product building but produces bias in which AG companies invest in, kills true innovation that would benefit local regions such as Brazil or Russia. That's Rocket 19. Merger affect the type of innovations being pursued. The case of GM crops. Market exhibit little variability, herbicide and pesticide resistance traits commercialize much faster than other traits. One explanation for this bias is GM crops. Companies are also large agrochemical producers. Herbicide resistance is not a generic crop. A crop is only made resistant to a specific type of herbicide. The company therefore promotes the use of its own chemicals. This complementary bias, reinforced by a merger, is a legitimate concern. The Bayer Monsanto decreases the company's incentives to invest in developing GM crops with non-chemical resistance traits, concern for local growing condition that could benefit from specific stress or disease resistance, Russia and Brazil. Next, small farms are key to innovation. UCS 21. Larger farms mean fewer people can become farmers. Energy innovation and initiatives, new practitioners being crucial. We need an expanding diversifying creative community to meet challenges. Consolidation operates in the wrong directions. Next, econ. Plan solves econ. Mergers are killing market innovation, which is necessary for growth and competition. Econ decline guarantees war because of lack of interdependence and internal conflicts that spill over. Our impact flows. We have an econ advantage through any minute and cross-sex that they're just, excuse me 1 second. Yeah. All right. Just gonna move on to off case now. Condo is a voting issue. First off, strat skew, nothing we can say and make them go for it. Education, multiple worlds destroy in-depth discussion and topic-specific education, justify severance and intrinsic perms. Dispose solves, gives the 2AC a strategic option, and voter fairness and education. In their cross-ex, they said that their counterplan is conditional. We should not be able to have, they should not have to have a conditional counterplan. We have to come up with a plan that we can't ever kick. Next, debt ceiling. No shot, it passes, but Dems can use other measures to raise the ceiling. Schnell 921. Republican leaders rejected that plan. Congress has fewer than 10 days. Republican leaders rejected that plan. Dems are moving ahead. Fate of the bill, the House voted on party lines. The fate of the bill is far less certain in the Senate. GOP leaders have vowed to oppose it, and Republicans are showing no signs of budging. Dems do not need our help. McConnell said they have every tool to address the debt limit on their own, the same process they used to ram inflammatory spending and already plan to use against this fall. This is the sense that he's bluffing on more than 10 votes, and and that's just wrong. Next, Dems don't have the votes to raise the debt ceiling and multiple issues thump. Carsey Lane, lane 9-8. Dems need 10 GOP votes. GOP will not help. There are many important priorities at play. GOP vow not to provide votes to make Dems spending on the votes. 64 GOP senators vow they won't support raising debt ceiling. It's not clear how Biden and Democrats will deal with this. Legislative issues, dynamics have been brewing for months. Here's the thing: logical policymakers can do both, but because politicians will recognize that both plans are popular and beneficial, and so they will hop on it. And on top of that, you pass our bill that gives Biden PC. He just does more. He just keeps winning with that PC, and he carries it over, and he's pushed for infrastructure, debt ceiling, all that stuff. Next, or the ceiling is inevitable and has no impact. Honestly, Fisher 19, debt apocalypse is highly unlikely. Congress always raised the ceiling, rendering it symbolic since Congress has enacted 110 times. Plenty of times when Congress is split, lawmakers just wait for a dramatic effect. It wouldn't mean default. Default doesn't mean delay. U.S. must honor its debt. U.S. pays most important bills first. Neuters default risks. U.S. has plenty of money to service its debt. Tax revenue is more than high enough. Akin to a shutdown, aren't catastrophic. Payments on the calendar years in advance can always bank ahead. Squabbling wouldn't change the U.S. economy over 100 years of evidence. Get ready for grandstanding. Be ready to turn it out, even if Congress differs. Default isn't the outcome. Next, tons of thumpers. There is no chance it passes. This is today, 21. Afghanistan found the pivot easier. A string of events over an hour laid challenges. The drone strike in Kabul killed 10 citizens, rejected vaccine boosters. DOJ rejected vaccine boosters. The events illustrated Biden's predicament as he seeks economic proposals. Biden's weakened. He had been slated to focus on his agenda. Battles, it was evident the economic agenda wouldn't be the only matter at hand. Officials updated him that the French envoy was returning home. The economic agenda does not mean other issues are not looming. Biden is about to enter an intensive week of diplomacy, UN meetings, COVID summit, talk to foreign leaders. That's with France. Allies are smartering over Afghanistan withdrawal. The drone strikes announcement raises serious questions about the ability to accurately target terrorists. COVID strategy is tested, further complicated by booster shots. Fiat solves link. The plan passes immediately without fight. There is no link for them because it happens instantly. We debate over desire and not feasibility, and it will solve immediately. Next, Biden is hemorrhaging political capital, only changing conversation saves it. That's gift 95. How will Afghanistan affect Biden's approvals dipped in negative territory? Republicans are using this to their advantage. Kabul to paint a portrait of unrivaled commander-in-chief. Whether this proves to be a protracted loss will depend on how effectively the administration can change the conversation. Again, when our plan passes, he will get that bonus that he needs for PC. Now, big antitrust is popular. Trench out. important electoral appeal of antitrust is one of the few policy areas and aggressive the activists lift while splitting will help Democrats win the Senate in 2022. Next, winners win big. This is what I've been saying the whole time. Biden refills his capital with policy wins. It's Barrow 21. The question of whether Biden will evolve and leverage his political policy for big policy wins. Johnson signed seminal laws were savvy, ruthless. Next, FTC, independent shot now, March 20. As divisions continue, so will difference of evidence. Class over cases issues with FTC will follow in dissidence. The big unknown is Biden's choice. The president faced pressure from progressive versus establishment wing, unlikely to confirm anyone to progressive. Next, thumper, generic. All causes to lack of cred. Goolsbury 20. Goolsbury 20. Enforcement budget, too thin. Operate no less than a single economy, brings over a few days. Filings double. Next, no link, private litigation. The AF solves any trade-off link. Private litigation takes case off the government socket. That's Harrington 15. Lower threshold of conviction case, private litigation has been essential. DOJ more willing to tolerate. Again, double bind, econ. I stand open for cross-sects.
Can I have the, oh, wait. Oh, 1 second. I'm setting the timer. Okay. So you had a card that extended that small firms will actually innovate. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? How small farms are better at innovating than bigger farms?
Sure. Can you go ahead and specifically which card you're referring to?
UCS 21.
UCS 21. Scroll up there. Yeah, so consolidation is pretty much kills innovation because big firms don't really have to compete with anyone, so they have no reason to innovate. This is the whole problem with monopolies and why antitrust is important. Having a lot more small farms means that they're competing with each other, so they will inevitably just keep innovating to try to outcompete the other person.
Mm-hmm. And what was your response again to why the smaller farms are worse for the environment? How is big ag actually worse for the environment than small farms?
Well, I mean, it's a whole thing. That's when we were talking about like food wars and the whole idea of biodiversity. So and with all the monocultures and whatnot. So basically because they don't have to innovate and they can just keep pushing forward these seeds that are they're just not going to innovate because they have all of their capital built up in these other seeds. So this is the main reason why like they aren't really saying that like big farms are going to innovate when they have no incentive to innovate is kind of just wishy-washy. It's kind of just like, oh my God, they have all these resources, but they're not going to use it. They're just going to sit on the butts and just keep raking in money because why in it when you don't have to? You're the only seller. You're the only supplier. You're the only buyer.
Would our card about advancing in genomic analysis not be an incentive for big farms to innovate?
I mean, not really. Like whether like just because like, oh, it would be cool if we do genetic analysis. Like, okay, yeah, but like you have to tell like the corporations why it would be a good idea, and corporations have no reason to do that when the stuff that works for them works now. Like think bananas, for example, right? The only reason that we have these new types of bananas is because they died to a disease. Like unless something catastrophic happens to like a crop or something, they're not going to innovate, and that's what we are seeing.
So if with like the genomic analysis or the genomic editing, if that allows them to like produce significantly more, they can make more profit off of that. How is like, all right, never mind, time's up.
Yeah, they just make more profit. Exactly. That's not good. They're just, I mean, come on, man. Like they're just going to go ahead and like keep, oh, it keeps going.
Time's up for cross sex. Yeah.
Yeah.
For the 2NC, we're going to take some prep time. And we're
Okay, yes, so prep time is over. That'll leave us with 5 minutes and 23 seconds. I will write that in the chat. We're actually gonna continue our prep time, sorry.
It is on.
Towards me.
Oh,
All right, yes, so that leaves us with 4:12 in prep time now, so I will update that. All right, and then I'll email my documents. Give me 1 second. All right, I just sent it to the email chain. Y'all let me know if y'all got it. Did you mute your computer?
yeah, the sound's off in my microphone.
Do you have it? Yep,
Yes, I've got your document.
say it again.
He has it. He's got it.
Yes.
George Mason, still no? Do you have it? No?
Got it. To my partner. Just waiting to see if he gets it. He's got it.
All right, let me start my timer. Oh, wait. one more. Okay. Jesus. All right, everyone's ready. I will start in 3, 2, 1. All right, first to address their conditionality, they stated in theory that they stated that it's unfair they stated that it's unfair that the conditionality stated that it's unfair that we have a state's counterplan because that we can kick out of it at any time. However, we can clearly state that we are not kicking out of it. So therefore, however they configured their speeches post stating the counterplan will not change. It does not affect it. For therefore, the debate continues to be debated fairly because we will not be kicking out of the state's counterplan. Therefore, it is a even and fair debate and will be continued to be even and fair. Now on to off case FTC trade. The FTC can handle the increase of caseloads that the affirmative will trigger. That causes a shift away from its current focus on slowing the rate of AI's development in business. That causes unchecked expansion of algorithmic bias in the machine learning and artificial intelligence. The disadvantage outweighs the turns the case. The AI is the biggest impact and around. It's a conflict multiplier and present at infinite number of scenarios from human extinction. The one in C, Thomas evidence indicates the machine learning tech could fall into the hands of bad actors or authoritarian government that produces in a limited number of scenarios in which the technology undermines the core institution that sustains life. It could use to tank the economy, start proxy conflicts in global hotspots, could fall into the hands of dictators and undermine all the world governments. To further extend, as we stated, the FTC is focusing on enforcing the enforcement of privacy. They have turned their gears and are focusing on beefing up privacy laws, as stated. The AF stated that therefore we're passing it to the FTC and that it's the exact same thing as their AF when it is not. But we're saying that the FTC should focus primarily on privacy laws because privacy laws have more of a catastrophic effect, and that it is more important to focus on privacy laws now. For if privacy laws are not focused on, that would lead to a detrimental effect on the FTC focus on antitrust. Law takes enormous toll on them in terms of expenses and labors. So therefore, the FTC does not have the resources to be able to do both. The privacy laws and what the AF is offering. They don't have the capacity to be able to address them both. Therefore, they need to address the privacy laws. Of the amount of cases that they're getting, they have to choose wisely on the cases that they get, and therefore they have to address the privacy laws because if they don't address the privacy laws, that would lead to catastrophic impacts. FTC needs to focus on privacy for their job overseas. Their job to oversee privacy and antitrust. Therefore, they have to address privacy law because it is more important. Not dealing with privacy means that there will be an increase that will allow AI to receive all data and therefore lead to exploitation. Again, if they don't address privacy laws, that means that all data that all data can be used in very unfair ways such as AI continues to grow and gain more powerful, people can exploit the power of those AI intelligence, such as dictators, and leads to catastrophic things. Now of the overview, onto the politics, the enacting antitrust. Wait, what did I do? Enacting antitrust laws would create political backlash and nearly public pass economy changes. And antitrust will ensure that serious congressional pushback because of the controversy, and it will cause such controversy will stem from trying to change the Sherman Act of Clean Air. By losing political capital, Biden will not be able to pass major policies. If the plan passes, then debt ceiling cannot be passed and be raised. If Biden loses political capital, not raising will lead to economic decline and therefore lead to war. Next, debt ceiling will get raised now. Creighton 21. McConnell said Republicans won't vote to lift the debt ceiling, but neither side can hear about the physical precedents. Public debt and deficits barely matter politically, so it's likely Congress will oblige if they increase the ceiling 3 times during the Trump administration. Next, Congress is likely to raise the debt ceiling. Heads 24. Goldman is skeptical and will continue to do this. Democratic leaders in the House and Senate will control what legislation comes to vote, which is likely to put greater pressure on Republican support and support a debt ceiling, while raising the limit might not be politically popular. Spending cuts of the size necessary to limit deficit will be far less popular. Next, in Grizzly Dennis, a tight new items, knock existing issues off the docket. Political 8-9. The September pileup is poised to include the government funding that expires at the end of the month. A host of other programs are expiring this fall, including an eviction moratorium, a conflict on confluence of pressure that will bear down fast on congressional leaders. The Senate is on a recess until mid-September, leaving the little room maneuver. Next, debt ceiling crisis, debt ceiling clapper goes global. Shen 714, any credit even affecting U.S. Treasury bonds impacts the U.S. global financial systems, given the treasuries are the global risk-free asset of choice and the vital interbank liquidity as collateral. Next, economic decline ensures global instability and conflict. The rise, Manning's 20, the rise of millions out of extreme poverty and growth in global middle class, they may be jeopardized unless there is a strong recovery from COVID. The middle class has started to shrink lower than expected in economic growth would increase that figure. The erosion of the middle class correlates to political instability, democratic backsliding, and great conflict. Next, advocating antitrust legislation drains political capital. Global Antitrust Law, Group 21. Global trying to introduce a bill that would overhaul antitrust law. Subcommittee ranking members Lee firmly oppose sweeping transformation of antitrust laws. The most likely outcome appears to be antitrust officials using existing tools, assuming Congress would provide additional funding. Will take the time, using that funding will take the time. The path of meaningful legislation remains extremely complicated. Depends on whether Congress and the Biden administration are willing to expend the time and political capital necessary to pass a bill, which also means parties can agree on what should be included in the light of competing priorities. Absence then key personal, narrowing congressional calendar prospects appear slim. Now on to Stake's counterplan. The overview is to further explain our counterplan, the plan that the AF is trying to enforce can itself be passed by the FTC, meaning that does not have to be enforced federally. It can be passed by the FTC. It can be passed through the FTC under the Section 5 of the FTC Act to substantially increase prohibitions on anti-competitive business practices. We also Congress should pass. We also stated that Congress should pass $1 billion a proposal. The proposal to create new digital focused division in the FTC that would policy privacy violations, cybersecurity incidents, and other online businesses. The FTC does not now to continue. The FTC does not plan to rulemaking authority granted under. The FCC does the plan through the rulemaking authority granted by the FTC ACT to increase prohibitions on anti-competitive business practices through including an effective competition standard that the apps Solvency advocate Stein and Stuck. The counterplan does not link to the trade-off DA. Because the second plank of the counterplan passes $1 billion proposal to create a new digital focused division in the FTC that increases funding 30% to massively increasing regulatory oversight of big tech. That's Rom and Zakarsky 21. And they the app stated that I'm going to concede to the rest of my time. I'm ready.
Okay, you ready for cross-ex? Can you hear me okay?
You cut out. Yeah, can you say that again?
Okay. Yeah, I actually DC'd halfway through your speech. So, but everything's fine. I got most of everything. So I got your plain text, so we should be fine.
Okay.
Can you still hear me okay right now?
Yeah,
Good?
it's a little choppy, but like
Little toppy.
ask you to repeat the question, don't.
Do I sound okay right now? A little better?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, we can be ready for cross-examination.
Okay, I'm gonna start cross-ex on 3, 2, 1. So just to confirm, you're not kicking out your your counterplan?
No.
Okay, that was all. Let me just go through my notes here real quick. Okay, so is it safe to say that your impact for all of your disadvantages is conflict?
Can you repeat that?
The impact for all of your disadvantages is conflict,
Well,
right?
one of the impacts for the disadvantage is extinction. The second one, it's economic failure, which could lead to which is possible. Conflict. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Now the one that refers to extinction, can you just run me to that card real quick again? The one that refers to extinction, can you just run me that card again?
You said to read the entire card?
Yeah, the extinction card again. I just want to double.
You want me to read through the entire card just to clarify?
No, not the entire card. Just tell me the tagline and whatnot.
Okay, it's basically saying that bad actors will take advantage of AIs, and the reason, and because of AIs will continue to grow and gain more power because of all the data that they will be able to access because of the lack of privacy laws that can be enforced. And if dictators take over those AIs, that can that can lead to dictators using those AIs, but then also means that the AIs continuously could gain that data to the point where the AIs itself can become powerful enough to cause human extinction.
That was Thomas 20, right?
Yep.
Okay, so how is it causing human extinction?
As I stated, that AIs itself can gain data and continue to gain data powerfully that can allow that AI itself to become intelligent enough to it.
So just saying that the AI is going to be smart enough to know how to kill us doesn't actually mean that it's going to kill us.
And then also that is one, but then also bad actors can use the AI itself and use that against humans to cause human extinction.
So another human will kill all of humanity.
Say it again.
Just cause. So your point is that another human will kill all of humanity using AI.
There's multiple different aspects on how human extinction.
I just don't see the link, the actual impact itself that specifically states how they're going to actually, because this sounds more like a link card where it's like AI is really dangerous and could cause extinction, and this is how they would cause extinction.
Use the AI to become more powerful, and that itself can cause the AI to gain all that knowledge that it gained from dictators, and therefore lead to human extinction. Because AI could overcome human intelligence.
It's time.
Intelligent.
All right, we'll be taking our prep. What do we have? 359. I'm going to put that over here.
I think we're at the 1 and R right now, right? So
oh, I'm sorry.
The question is whether the 1 and R is going to be taking any prep. So is the 1 and R taking any prep?
Yes, some of our prep time. So we are at 4:12. So I will put that in the thing, and we will start prep time in 3, 2. All right, done with prep time. That is 3:13. We'll put that in the chat right now. Cool. And my partner will be taking it.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to be like going over case. So I'll start on their first advantage, and then I'll go on to the second advantage. And then if I get to it, I'll go over like some solvency stuff. And there's no new cards. So is everyone good? Okay, cool. I'll start the timer in 3, 2, 1 now. Okay, so in their UCS 21 card, they say that small firms will be better at innovating, but with the advances in like gene editing for plants shown in Henry 20, there will be a profit incentive for the large antitrust to innovate more. So, and then on top of this, it'll provide more like physical output of food, more product output for the like the companies themselves. The big companies themselves will be providing a larger food output. So the food there will be no food scarcity, and there will be more innovation within this field in with big ag rather than the small rather than small farms. They also said that the monoculture accelerating and getting bigger is a problem, but our Hansen 12 evidence rather says that monoculture is declining significantly with the new strategies that are being implemented and like further adopted, such as more intensive crop rotations and no-till systems that are like further increasing. They can help meet all of these issues, and the monoculture issues that they bring up to get to their impact will not happen. And again, to go back to the advances in gene editing, they talk about the loss of plant genetic diversity will be a major cause for extinction. But again, with the incentive for big ag to use this new technology for gene editing, it's a huge opportunity to completely get rid of the plant genetic diversity problem that they talk about in their Govindaraj 15 card, where they say that this problem explicitly will lead to extinction. That is their whole impact, is that low PGD will lead to extinction. But again, with access to gene editing technology that's growing faster and faster, that completely gets rid of the problem, and only big ag is capable of implementing those. Big ag is the only one that's capable of implementing those strategies. Small farms cannot do it, which also gets rid of the idea that food insecurity will lead to war, because there will be no issue with food scarcity because of the plant genetic diversity. There will be no famines, and additionally, because there will be no food insecurity, that is their whole link to the war. So if food insecurity equals war, and we get rid of food insecurity, there's no war for Advantage 1. I will go down to, or I will extend further for the last part, that the AF kills the environment and big ag is better for it. Big ag currently is producing significantly more food and have more access to technology than small farms will ever be able to, and they won't be able to solve these problems. And then small farms and organic farms that the AF wants to use to take over instead of the big ag, obviously, lead to further habitat loss and nitrogen pollution. They're significantly worse in regards to this problem than big ag is, and implementing the plan will lead to the problems that they claim to solve, while big ag will solve them. And then I'll move down to the second advantage. Our right 10 evidence again will turn the case. The financial markets will be completely uncertain. They won't. The consumer welfare standard that's currently in place will be disrupted by it, and they won't be able to fix the problems that they're claiming to solve. Additionally, our WALT 20 evidence states that econ decline does not lead to war. There's no out of the 40 or more recessions, again, in the WALT 20 card, 40 or more recessions that America has faced has not led to any war. So there's no reason to believe that this time econ decline will, if it never has and never will. And additionally, even if it would, the economy is resilient, according to our Dresner 12 evidence. We're able to respond to these kind of crises significantly enough and quickly enough and robustly enough that the economic downfall that they're talking about would never happen because of the economic policy that the U.S. tends to implement. And then with our Watson and Winfrey card that we said in at the end of the Advantage 1 or Advantage 2, sorry. Antitrust against big ag will skyrocket prices and lower sustainability. So again, it will make it harder passing the plan and focusing on small farms will make it significantly more difficult for people to get food. Food prices will rise, and they could cause famines that they're claiming that they stop. And U.S. exports, additionally, in our Ramirez Santos evidence, they have no way of they're stopping the current trend of ag exporting at an all-time high, which is solving global food scarcity. So currently in the status quo, we're already solving all of the problems that they are claiming to. I have 15 seconds if there's anything else. I have 3 seconds left. I'm going to concede the rest of this.
All right, we're gonna start our running prep now.
Or did you say something, or that you're using prep time or something? Which one?
Seven.
You can. And then you have the option.
2 cards, so I'm just gonna send them. Just a sec.
Wait,
No, never mind.
are you,
It's
you're
just
sending over a
fine.
document, just to clarify?
Yeah. Got it. Should just be 2 cards in there.
We got it.
Great. So I'm gonna go on case, your solvency, then first advantage, second advantage, then off case, your counterplan, debt, FTC. Great. It's ready. That's ready. Ready. All right. Then I will begin. So first on solvency, this assumes that ex post remedies are fine. It's not true. Expand the effective competition standard, increase the extent of remedies to include corporation breakups. Companies don't want to risk getting structurally separated, so they'll change behaviors. Sound and evidence from the 1AC, extend that. Our courts undermine solvency evidence. Courts fail in the status quo because they interpret how to evaluate cases now, erring to consumers. Shifting to abandoning evaluation cases that affect markets competition. Overall solved. Simon stuck again. Pressure direction is key. Extend our Morton 20 evidence. Clarity solves. Overcomes even stringent criticism of judicial antitrust. Essentially, our plan solves simply because companies just don't want to risk getting structurally separated, so they're going to change their behaviors simply by having the plan in place. The negation continually reads that big ag is going to somehow innovate because of the new genetic editing thing on our agriculture advantage. However, there's simply no reason for them to innovate. Just because they're already in control of the market. There's no reason to spend additional money on innovation and risking to trying something new when you're already in control of the market and generating a steady supply stream of money. There's just no point in trying that. Moving on to the first advantage of agriculture. Again, plan solves the agriculture. Lack of competition means monopolies have no incentive to create new technology to solve food scarcity, cause extinction through food wars that escalate and go nuclear. Only answer by neg is that big ag innovates more due to genomic editing and no food scarcity due to more food output. Our answer is as follows. Government Rush 15 says the PGD is causing extinction of biodiversity, causing famine. We state using empirical evidence. Our impact is food wars, which has been completely ignored by the except for analytical evidence in the 1 and R. This is pretty much 2 lakes, and quantum goes to 16. Our AF breaks up big businesses. They can't solve for that. Furthermore, extend our evidence false or 1IC evidence cites aggregate studies in food scarcity and conflict likelihood, analyzing the cause of every historical conflict and how lack of resources contribute to escalation of tensions. And food demand is an inelastic need. Their F simply doesn't take into account a world where there are shocks of the entire food system, causing contamination of the overall food supply, much more likely in concentrated markets. That's 1AC internal link evidence. Furthermore, 4 corporations are being responsible for 65% of sales is simply just not good for competition. Again, that's 1AC, NSAC, ADLP, Mooney evidence. We're just hurt innovation. That's simply a stated fact. Even if R&D spending is unchanged, it's simple economics, simple business. You wouldn't want to spend more money on doing something that you're already getting by sitting around doing nothing. There's no point in innovating when you have nothing to risk your money on to innovate for. Yeah, you have a probability of getting more money, but you have to spend money to get there. There's no logical reason to spend that money on a chance that you can fail when you're getting big bucks by just sitting there doing nothing. Their argument doesn't flow. You have to vote F on the agriculture advantage. Moving on to second, econ. Plan solves econ, extend that. Mergers are killing market innovation necessary for growth and competition. Econ decline guarantees war because of lack of interdependence and internal conflict spill over. Again, they conceded in cross-text that we could choose which argument to flow. That was in their first cross-examination. We chose to flow the econ decline leads to war. Sedano and Popov 19. They read that card. They have no defense against our econ advantage. For our advantages, vote F. Again, they read 2 different things. It's a double bind. You have to prefer our advantages since they conceded in cross-ex that we could choose. I'll get to that argument later. Moving on to off case, onto the counterplan. Conditionality, extended conditionality arguments. They said they wouldn't kick this in both the cross-ex and their speech, but until the 2 and R is read, we'll continue to bring it up just in case. Number 1, strat skew. Nothing we can say can make them go for it. Secondly, education, multiple worlds of story, in-depth discussion of topic-specific education. Number 3, justify severance and intrinsic firms. Number 4, dispo solves, gives the 2AC a strategic option. Number 5, voter fairness and education. If they do kick the counterplan, despite confirming that they wouldn't in speech and in cross-ex, vote affirmative to preserve fairness in debate. Cross-ex is binding so as to ensure that any clarification cannot be reneged upon. And if we cannot trust promises made both in speech, we cannot trust any promises made in debate at all. Debt, ceiling disad. These are the cards. When they are inevitable, the Fed will do anything to avoid a default. It's Fear 19. Should deadlock bring the brink of a default, the central bank is the playbook. Fed staffers outlined 9 actions the Fed could take. Options included bond purchases and emergency landing, purchasing treasuries, delayed coupons, and swapping treasuries that weren't in default. A follow would be so terrible the Fed would take all possible action. However, repugnant, Powell agreed. For the no pass, it'll be more difficult than in 2011. Kraswalk 821. It's possible Republicans withhold support. Raising the limit is a sensitive issue among Dems, particularly with swing states. 2011 marked most fraught negotiations so far. Apologies. Experts think this may be even more difficult. Just a second. Yeah. Extend hours. Snell 921 evidence. There's simply no shot at passes. Dems can use other measures to like raise the ceiling. Extend Carney lane 9-8. Dems just don't have the votes to raise the debt ceiling. Multiple issues thumb. Logical policymakers can do both. They didn't really argue against this. You should flow that on the debate. Logical policymakers can and will do both the AF and raise the debt ceiling. That just kind of throws out their entire disad. Moving on to FTC. Yeah. Give me just a sec to pull that back up. Yeah. Extended counterplan link arguments. Counterplan links is considering cross-X. That's binding. Their impact is the same as ours. Pref the F in this scenario. Passage and non-passage result in the same scenario. Pref the F for the agriculture advantage. It's BR net beneficial. Extend our thumper. Goolsby 20. There are all causes to the lack of credit for Biden. If the AF doesn't uniquely link. Or sorry, there are all causes to the lack of cred. The AF doesn't uniquely link. There's no response by neg. AF doesn't link. Only counterplan does. Pref the AF. Extend Mark's 20 card. FTC independence is shot now. DA is non-unique. Extend our no link card. Harrington 15. Private litigation is also the AF supposed link to the neg DA. Again, meaning the counterplan uniquely links. Pref the AF. I have 7 seconds left. I'll concede the rest of my time.
Judges, I have to use the bathroom. I will use prep time, but I have to use the bathroom first. So is that okay? Can I get like a thumbs up? All good. All right. So I will be okay. So we will be using prep time. We have 3 minutes and 13 seconds. So I will set that on the timer. We'll be using the rest of our prep time. So I will start that in 3, 2, 1. Okay, 3 seconds left, so that is the end of my prep time. We'll be setting a timer. There's no document to send, it is all analytics, but I will offer a roadmap. I will first address off case, such as state's counterplan and FTC, the FTC advantage, disadvantage, and then I will move on to case. Cool. All right. 3, 2, 1. First, I would like to elaborate on the state's counterplan. Now, the state's counterplan says that we can pass the AF through the FTC. The state's counterplan says that the FTC can enforce what the AF is trying to say itself. What the AF is trying to enforce, it is trying to implement. We also stated that Congress will also give the FTC $1 billion to be able to use those resources to be able to address why our disadvantage won't happen. Now onto the FTC. The FTC disadvantage. Now to the FTC disadvantage, we have to talk about the impact that the FTC disadvantage causes. That causes human extinction and inequality globally. AF has not yet addressed this at all because the FTC has to focus on the privacy laws. They're saying that the FTC should focus on the antitrust laws. However, the FTC needs to focus on the privacy laws because the privacy laws are severely more important because the impact that they can have are way more important in on a more magnitude. It's more scale when it comes to magnitude. Because if the FTC does not, first of all, the FTC lacks resources. They do not have enough money. They do not have enough lawyers. They do not have enough people that work for them to be able to pick and choose cases. If the AF is to be solved, if the AF is to be enacted, that means that they will specifically focus on what the AF is trying to address. They would not specifically focus on privacy laws. If they're not focusing on privacy laws, that means that data will be able to be freely shared and continuously to be shared to AIs. And if AIs continuously get data and they become more powerful and the AIs become more stronger, as in they become more intelligent, they increase in what they're able to do, that means that people will be able to use them. That means dictators and those who have bad incentives will be able to use those AIs and cause inequalities around the world. They will be able to use that will be able to use that and will lead to catastrophic causes. Now, AIs itself can continue to gather intelligence, where they become more intelligent than human beings themselves. If they become intelligent than more human beings themselves, who's to say that they will not rise against human beings? If they rise against human beings and begin to start attacking human beings, that would lead to human extinction. And if there is human extinction, then all of this doesn't matter. The AF cannot be enacted. The AF can be enacted if there's no humans to enact what the AF is trying to say, then that itself kills their advantages, because if human extinction is being caused, because if the FTC is to specifically focus on what the AF is trying to focus on, that means they can't focus on those privacy laws. And if the privacy laws are not being focused on, that will lead to human extinction. They need to focus on privacy laws. And if they don't have the resources to pick and choose, they can't say, yo, let's elect the AF today. Oh, tomorrow we'll focus on privacy laws. That is not how it works, because they have to pick and choose cases. They have to pick and choose cases. And if they're picking and choosing cases and the AF is giving them pressure to only focus on what they're trying to enact, that therefore means they're not able to focus on privacy laws. And if the privacy laws, as stated, if the privacy laws are not being addressed, human extinction and inequality will happen. Now on to case. Their first advantage says that their first advantage leads to the impact of famine. It leads to the impact of econ decline because people will run out of food. Now, we have come up with a solution. Big tech itself has produced seeds to improve PGD. Now, what that means that gene editing solves the PGD issue that AF claims. Now, and they state they state that the big agriculture companies will not want to do that because they're focused on profit. If they're focused on profit, that means they will want to do that because that's just another profit revenue that they can use. That is more profit coming towards them. That means, one, they will want to do that. They're incentivized to do that. That will increase innovation, therefore improve the economy, and that also solve their impact. That also solves their impact because they said the fact there is no PGD will lead to famine, will lead to less food will lead to war. Well, if big tech is addressing that PGD problem, then there will be no famine. There will be no war. Why? Because people will have food. And if people have food, they are happy. And if they are happy, that will not lead to war. And again, econ decline does not cause war. There is no part in history where econ decline has caused war. The American economy itself has tanked, and we have not gone into war with other people. Therefore, their second advantage, which states that if econ continues to fall, that will inevitably lead to war. Well, if econ never has lead to war, what makes them think that it would lead to war now? And then again, they said that it would lead to war because of famine, and no food will lead to the increase in econ. But we addressed that. That's the end of my time.
Okay, we're going to start taking the rest of our prep. 1 minute and 7 seconds. Starting.
Give me just a second.
Yeah, he's just setting it up. Right.
Starting up.
Starting now. All right, that's our time. Sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Sucks.
I'll just send it over.
Just scooch over. No, just, yeah, that'll be fine because I also need to access the doc. There you go. Okay. Is everybody ready? I know I've had all the tech problems today. Isn't it great? Computer almost died too. All right. Are you ready? Are you guys ready? Opponents ready? Okay. I'm going to go over a case first, and on case and off case, including CP. And yeah, let's go. Okay, so first thing, agricultural advantage. We have a massive agricultural advantage. I mean, we have so many things that state how big business is just destroying the agricultural community. I mean, how they destroy small farms, they destroy Monsanto, they buy out all the biodiversity. And saying that gene editing solves biodiversity, one, gene editing is still a long way off, and food prices and consolidation, this can solve consolidation like right now, right? We can solve consolidation right now, and that's what our fiat link does anyways. So to say that just because they can access it doesn't prove that they will, and saying that we don't have any impacts because there is no monoculture is going down. It's also untrue. Bayer Monsanto, that doesn't take into account Bayer Monsanto, that doesn't take into account any of just consolidation in general as more, because if we don't fix antitrust now, it will only get worse. This is a continuous problem that we have to deal with. Next, our economy advantage. Sorry, actually, let's do this. Firstly, the FTC CP was conceded in cross-ex to link both and links to both the FTC and politics disadvantage. Claiming otherwise in any of the speech is a voter as CX is binding. A CP runs the plan, and the FTC CP runs the plan with the FTC as the agent instead of the USFG as a whole. That is why they link directly to the FCC DA, causing all the impacts they argue. They further deny Harrington 15, which means that the CP uniquely links while the AF does not. Furthermore, the passage of a $2 billion spending package through Congress was conceded as a link to the politics disad in our cross-ex. Our winners win argument was conceded in the 2NR. So again, the CP uniquely links while the AF does not. On to then with the econ advance, back to the econ advantage, they claim that there was no time in history where econ has led to war, which is simply empirically untrue. We have the Sardanam and Paparov evidence, which they themselves read and told us we could choose to flow over their econ decline, and war equals ARG and our, so prefer the after that. But honestly, the idea that no time in war and no time is economic decline ever caused war, World War II, Great Depression, like right there. Just the big thing is that economic impacts lead to war. It's not so much that every time there's an economy collapse, that there's always going to be war. It's more so that war always comes alongside an economy collapse. That is where the real argument lies. The other thing is that for the CP's disads, for the disads that the CP links to, all their disads are our impacts. It's that the economy and extinction is going to happen. If you're going to have the same impacts as us, then you just have to go with the affirmative, because we are actually pushing forward a plan that does something. So at the very least, they have conceded our economy impacts because they're the same impacts. The other thing is that here's the other thing, Perm do both for their counterplan. I mean, there's no reason why what? Never mind. Ignore what I just said. I didn't say any of that. The thing is that with our fiat link, this is about the political capital sort of idea. When it comes to political capital, Biden will keep winning. You know, he'll win more and he'll win more and he'll win more. That's one of the big advantages to passing our plan. So if anything, their idea that that our bill changing the CWS, or sorry, changing, completely untrue. He'll just take that political capital and use that to get into infrastructure. He's going to use that to get into the debt ceiling, make that easier, which is also just going to inevitably pass no matter what. And they don't even consider that in the 2NR. Oh, thanks. I kind of just want to go back into our advantages. The whole idea of our agriculture advantage with, because the idea of the profit incentive is it's just because that they have this profit incentive, that just in saying that this is another revenue stream that they can tap into isn't a compelling argument to me. If that was a compelling argument and they had the ability to do that, they would have already done that. And to be honest, at the end of the day, they've been gene editing. The idea of gene editing itself, we've been doing that for centuries. That is all agriculture. The way we grow our agriculture is all through gene editing. We just now have a process like with CRISPR that does it more efficiently. And the thing is that it's still untested and has huge ethical repercussions to be using that. And developing that kind of technology is actually an entirely other discussion that is beyond the scope of this debate. Saying that honestly, corporations that are consolidated, that have the ability, that now are going to have this massive amount of gene editing, that's terrifying to me. That's absolutely insane. Next, their idea that we have more, that big ag creates more food. having multiple smaller farms that constantly, and that's a trend.
I did a great job, by the way.
Yeah, you guys did too.
No
Damn,
matter
man.
win or loss,
I
well,
see why we all in the finals here.
I'm saying we made it to the finals either way, man. So no
Oh man.
matter who
Good
wins
debate.
or loses, we bragging when we get home. So
I know, right? Is this your guys' first debate too?
yeah, first time.
Yeah. Oh, it's first turn, I should say. Oh my God. Whew. You guys hit us hard. You guys hit us well. All right, where are you going now?
Think we're all in.
Is George Mason and James Madison both there? All right. I know the decision. Armand, you know the decision. Do you want me to announce or you want to announce it? No preference? Okay, I guess I'll go. You can all hear me? All right. So congratulations to both teams to making it to the finals at the 4th annual Phyllis Schatz Invitational in the novice division. After a very good debate, the decision is a 3-0 for the negative team from James Madison. So good job, good job. So I guess since I said that, I'll go first. I end up voting negative on the counterplan with the FTC disad. They don't say that the counterplan links to both their disads. It links to politics and not the FTC disad because the counterplan literally gives the FTC all of the funding they need to be able to do your plan and then also address the privacy concerns. So it solves the AI that leads to extinction. And so there's no defense against the AI type situation or any of that disad. And so if they do your plan, but give the FTC extra funding, then it does everything that your app does and then also gets extra funding. And so it solves it. And so the 2AR argument perm is the argument that you should have on that flow, because you can do it both, because there's no reason why you can't just fund something else, right? If the counterplan was like, let's fund NASA so we could go to Mars, and then they ran a disad unrelated, like you could perm that. I would also say that the negative team says the counterplan is conditional, and you ran conditionality bad. Their only response is, okay, we're going to go for it now, right? And so you could have easily been like, that's not an answer to conditionality. You said it was conditional. We had a guard against this, which means that you should still reject the team, game over. And so the negative team has to have answers and explanations for why conditionality is justified, and not like it's condo, oh, no, it's unconditional now, it all goes away. And so you basically drop that procedural argument. But the affirmative, you're just like, if they don't go for it in the count and then 2NR, then vote against them, but they go against it, go for it in the 2NR, so it doesn't do the value that you want it to. And you always need to give more answers to the counterplan, like why the counterplan won't be able to solve your case, various different things like that, opposed to just saying conditionality bad. I think that there is a potential out for you with the politics disad, because you're winning that it's possible to be able to maybe have the link turn on the politics disad that the 2NR doesn't go to at all. And so my recommendation for the negative team is to kick out of your arguments and explain to me why I shouldn't vote on the politics turns for like winners win and stuff like that. But the impact comparison versus like AI just is not there for me to be able to do it. And arguably the counterplan would capture the winners win scenario as well. And so they would also get that link turn, but the 2NR doesn't make that argument. So I would be allowed some wiggle room for the 2AR if there was just more analysis and story on why why I should vote there in comparative to the AI individual scenario. Is pretty much how it goes down. I think some of the case debate is good and interesting in the questions of innovation and stuff like that. I would like to see some like evidence comparison in regards to like which evidence is more qualified on these questions, because it ends up being sort of like generically repeating sort of like the top level of analysis in terms of things like, obviously big farms are more efficient because we can produce more in a smaller space and that equals less emissions. And the negative is like, no, they do really bad things. And you have to add in all of that other emissions comes from like the transportation, the clear cutting that happens in other countries, and all the other stuff that actually makes it less efficient than small farms by getting into those additional warrants, opposed to just being like, well, big farms have more. And so opposed to just sort of repeating those various claims or explaining why I should prefer one person's evidence for the others. My bet is any evidence is saying that, big industrial agriculture is more efficient and good for the environment is probably coming from lobbying groups that are pretty biased. And so, you should probably make some indicts of their evidence in regards. But I think that overall, you do a pretty good job keeping the debate focused on what you want. You just need to make sure that you on the app side have better answers to the counterplan, opposed to just sort of like accepting the counterplan and just saying condo bad. So that's what I have to say.
Thank you.
Hold on,
We appreciate your feedback.
Yeah. So I basically agree with everything that Joe said. I did briefly consider that the affirmative might access link turns on politics, and that they'd made the no link argument. But the issue for me there is just like that the negative did extend that the economy is resilient, which is some sort of impact defense. It doesn't mean very much, but it's impact defense. Whereas like there's a pretty clear unmitigated AI impact with respect to the counterplan. I generally agree with the same recommendations that Joe made as well. I would also add that with respect to permutation, that you should just generally always make a permutation on the counterplan. Make a permutation on the counterplan, even if you don't understand what the permutation and the counterplan are, right? Even consider saying that the counterplan is something theoretically abusive. You can just look through your theory back files and just take a guess. It might not actually be, but it might just be helpful as far as like slowing down the negative and forcing them to answer it besides just answering condo. In general, I think that the case debate's really interesting. I like that everybody is talking about the affirmative. It has some interesting things to say with respect to the case turns. So I think that in general, I'd just recommend that the affirmative try to spend a little bit less time reading cards in the 2AC and making sure that you are answering your various arguments, right? Because I think that the 2AC actually ends up a little bit weirdly behind on the case debate. It doesn't really end up mattering here as much. Because of the counterplan. But similarly, there are a lot of cases where you should try to make smart analytic arguments with respect to arguments, even if you don't fully understand what they are. If you generally know that you're facing something like a counterplan, then the checklist that you can go through, like permutation, solve the affirmative, also went through dish add. Some of those pieces, but going through the full checklist is beneficial. And then the only comment, the main comment I have for like the negative is just that I think that doing a little bit more impact analysis, like at the top of the flow is also helpful, right? So you pretty clearly want to go for the AI impact. So doing an impact comparison in the block that's sort of similar to the kind of spiel that you give about AI rising up and killing all of us a little bit earlier. And at the top of the flow is also just generally beneficial and sort of concretizes what like the important stuff that's going on around is. And then just like you can also say something really obvious like we solved the plan because we literally are the plan plus some other thing, and they never said permutation, so don't let them say it again later.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. I'll say a few comments. Can folks hear me okay? I'm just checking my audio because I'm alone in a debate office late at night. I have no idea if things are working. So top level decision is the same as everybody else. I think the counterplan creates a buffer to offset the caseload by 1 billion. And this is why not having a permutation is dangerous, because even if you permuted that second part of the counterplan, you'd be on the affirmative, in a great situation. I would have felt more comfortable if the 2NR had explicitly said the counterplan solves each advantage, just to swat that out of the way, but you at least said that the FTC can enforce. I just think that you need to make some of these things more explicit. It's sort of like the tying up loose ends. And I think so much of debate is there's something going on in your head, but you want to make sure you've communicated it. And you might be thinking, well, that's obvious. Well, err on the side of communicating it anyways, because that's part of what debating is about. I actually think the best intricate debating on this round was on the agriculture page. I really liked it. I think that there was some debate about yield by the negative, whether it's more important to have very high yield versus the affirmative saying, well, that yield is volatile, in terms of biodiversity, it's unsafe, etc. I also think there was a little bit of late breaking debate about like incentives to innovate, whether company, I think there needs to be some response that maybe the company has no more people to sell it to or only so much to sell. So that affects their incentives to R&D. I even like the fact that the negative extended this nitrogen argument about why small farming is bad. I think that in the future, teams will do this. They'll nitpick about different things that may be a small farming practice of some small farms, because in that instance, they're talking about some sort of use of manure. But a question for me is how frequent is this? How much does it dominate, the typical practice of small farming as a whole? I really think the next level of the whole ag debate is to sort of establish some uniqueness baselines. What is the status of global yield right now? Is the problem distribution? Is the problem supply, etc.? Now, when I say that was the best debating, it's oddly the debating that didn't matter, right, for the flow, because it's like the plan or the counterplan solves it. So I just mentioned this where it's like sometimes you have to think like I'm debating a flow well, but where does it matter strategically? And if the affirmative isn't making distinctions with the counterplan, then it just literally doesn't matter. I think the second best debating on this debate, the flow in terms of intricacy or wow factor for me was the FTC disad, not the counterplan, but the disad. I think that the 2NR did a pretty good job, soapboxing about why AI getting too much information is going to be bad. I was really getting strong Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator vibes listening to it. And then you just kept going. And I literally started having the Terminator song going off in my head and like the orchestral score. So I think that you did a good job telling the story of the disad. And yeah, I'm being kind of silly, but like telling the story of a disad is important. And it mattered because this is something that had some strategic differential in the debate. Now, conditionality, that whole discussion was weird because in the cross-ex of the 1NC, the 1NC was being very shifty, said like, we can kick all kinds of things. We can kick pretty much anything. And then the 2NC said, no, we're definitely not kicking the counterplan. And I really think, as Joe says, that the affirmative should have stuck them with it. The argument to make is that you make your 2AC choices based on 1NC commitment. So it doesn't matter what the middle of the negative block suddenly decides to do. You maybe would have invested offense in some disproportionate way, if things were not conditional. So that's kind of something to think about. Whether the counterplan, the politics counterplan stuff, I'm sort of with every other judge here, it seems, or most judges, where it's just sort of like the counterplan or the plan kind of gets winners win, and I'm leaning towards the AF needs to do more explanation. Now, there's something you could have said, right? Like the counterplan is using the FTC with its rulemaking authority to do stuff. So that's, yes, an executive agency, but it's sort of like the FTC going rogue. So to what extent would the popularity of pushing something even unpopular through for the winner's win turn percolate up to the president versus the plan, which is a more sort of top level governmental action, and then therefore is more closely tied to the president. In other words, I do think there's a story to be told why winner's win applies more so to the plan than to the counterplan, but that didn't emerge in the 2AR. So, I just think this is around where more arguments invested against the counterplan would have been a good idea. Maybe the way to think about this is, I think sometimes novice debaters, they're first getting into debate and they hear an argument and then they say one thing that is a good argument in response to that, and then they move on. But try to remember that for each type of major argument, like a counterplan, disad, topicality, etc., the judge has a whole sheet of paper on that argument because they don't know to what extent that argument will blow up and be elaborated in the debate. So don't think of it as they said one thing, I'm going to say one thing in response, but more like they said one type of thing, and I need to invest a front line in it. I need to invest a buffet of options for the 2AC and for the 1AR and the 2AR to draw upon. But I do think this is a good debate. I think the discussions on ag were very kind of fascinating. I could definitely see how this could be, just the ag part of this resolution could be a great debate for the whole year. So good job, everybody. And I hope to see you in future debates, so I really hope that you persist and improve. Maybe one way of thinking about the online debating thing is you don't need to travel as much, so you're not as fatigued. There's something on the horizon, which is in-person debates, I don't know, hopefully in the spring. So get a bunch of online debates in, become like a super debater, and then see where you can excel, once winter and spring rolls around. So good luck, everyone.
Thank you so much. Judges, appreciate y'all for the feedback. Definitely means a lot. We definitely agree we have a lot to improve on. And also just want to say to our competition that it was an honor debating y'all. Y'all did a great job. Your cross-examinations were intense, super, super intense, for real. So, we obviously made it here together. Shows that we're all great debaters. So good luck to y'all on the rest of y'all debating careers. And
we're gonna get you next. We're gonna get you next time, man.
Oh, for sure. Okay. I try to keep it peaceful.
Thank you, judges, for judging. Well, in the future, hope to see you around.
Thanks for a great tournament, Joe. Woo, yeah,
Thanks.
Binghamton.
All right. See ya. Bye-bye.
No one fucking did that all weekend.